Well, here's the news. February 14th, 1891, directly from the London Times. Shocking murder in Whitechapel, and we all know Whitechapel is where Jack the Ripper was up to his no good deeds. The story is another murder, although not so fiendish in all its details as those which were enacted within a comparatively short period of one another in Whitechapel in 1888 and 1889, has been committed in the same district, and the many similar circumstances surrounding this latest mysterious crime seem to point it to being the same person. The place, the time, the character of the victim, and other points of resemblance recall in the most obvious way the seriousness of crimes associated in the popular mind with so-called Jack the Ripper. The locality in which this latest crime was committed was probably well chosen by the murderer, and as likely place as any is which to carry out this horrible deed with the least chance of detection. And, as with the previous crime, the murder shows an amount of cunning and precaution on his part that is really startling. The precise place in which the unfortunate woman was found is in the center of a narrow thoroughfare running under a railway arch belonging to the Great Eastern Railway Company and leading from Swallow Gardens and Ormond Street to Royal Mint Street. This archway, which is some 50 yards in length, is lighted at each end by lamps, and consequently, at those spots, it's fairly well lighted, while the central part is totally dark. It was in this part that the murder was committed. In the dark and secluded character of the place, it is a regular resort of the lowest class of women of ill fame, and during the last few hours before midnight, the police experience considerable difficulty in keeping the archway clear of them. The majority of the buildings in the immediate neighborhood of the archway are used as warehouses, although there are a considerable number of dwelling houses. Although the thoroughfare in question is not traversed by a large number of pedestrians, still persons are passing through it at all hours of the day and night on the way to or back from the large 3 railway goods depots, which almost adjoin, and which are situated in Royal Mint Street, Whitechapel, East London. The victim of yesterday morning's murder is a young woman between 25 and 35 years of age, and in this respect differs somewhat from the other victims, all of whom were upwards of 40 years of age. Although her right name and antecedents have not yet been ascertained, she still has been recognized by a number of persons, including several police officers, some of who knew her by the nickname of Carroty Nell, while by others she was known as Frances Hawkins or Coleman. She was in the habit of sleeping in some many common lodging houses which abound in this district. The police attached to Lemon Street Police Station have for a considerable time past noticed her loitering about Tower Hill and Lemon Street. And there is no doubt she was a woman of bad character and of the very poorest class. The whole of the clothing she was wearing at the time she was found was of the commonest and shabbiest description, while the heels had been worn almost entirely off her boots. At 20 minutes past 2 yesterday morning, Police Constable Thompson, 24H, who, by the way, was having his first experience of night duty, went along Chamber Street intending to go through the archway as far as the opening which leads into Royal Mint Street, which was the end of his beat. On entering the arch, he did not hear anything unusual, but on reaching the center, he would distinguish the form of a woman lying in the middle of the roadway, which is only wide enough to permit the passing of one vehicle at a time. He could make out that she was lying on her back with the legs crossed at the feet, and the officer at first was under the impression she had fallen down while in a state of intoxication and had gone off into a drunken sleep. On turning on his bullseye, he saw a terrible spectacle. The throat of the unfortunate woman was severed by the spinal column, severed to the spinal column, and blood was flowing freely from the gaping wound. The poor woman opened her eyes, proving that at the time life was not extinct and that the crime had only just been committed, at the most a few seconds before. It was at this moment Constable Thompson distinctly heard sounds of retreating footsteps. Evidently, the murderer had a very narrow escape. Had the officer at once and speedily taken up pursuit, he would, in all probability, have effected the capture of the man who had committed the crime, or at least he might have gotten a good view of him and so have been able to furnish particulars which might have led to his ultimate capture. The constable, it should be mentioned, is a young man of little experience in police work, having been on the force only 6 weeks, and previous to that was engaged in one of the mines in the north. A more experienced officer would probably have taken up the chase, with the result that the author of the deed would no doubt have been caught and would put an end to these senseless crimes in Whitechapel. Thompson, as soon as he saw his condition in which the woman was, sounded his whistle for assistance, and this was quickly answered by the appearance of Constable Scott, who had only parted from the first named officer a few minutes previously. The body was quite still, although Scott could feel that the pulse of the woman was faintly beaten and blood was still running from the wound in her throat. This wound ran from right to left, the commencement being upwards of an inch above the ear, while at one point it was 3 inches in depth. The gash appeared to be somewhat jagged in character, but the great depth clearly showed the amount of physical force that must have been used in inflicting it. The whole of the arteries and tissues were severed, while the spinal column was also injured. At once, acting on the orders issued after the commission of the first of the Jack the Ripper murders in the district, the police on duty in the immediate neighborhood of the railway arch blocked all the thoroughfares and approaches leading to it. But although the murder could have had a very short start, it was quite long enough for him to enable him to make an escape. Superintendent Arnold and Detective Inspector Reed of H Division were quickly on the spot and issued the necessary instructions to have the nearest lodging houses searched, and a telegram was dispatched to Scotland Yard informing the authorities of what had happened. The last named gentleman, having ascertained that life was extinct, made a minute examination of the body and the position it was lying. The woman was bareheaded and her hair was disarranged, indicating that she had been engaged in some sort of struggle. One arm was stretched by her side while the other was bent towards the breast. Close by the side of the dead woman was her hat, which was formed of very old crepe. The deceased was then searched when, to the surprise of the spectators, another hat was found in the folds of her dress. This article may hereafter have an important hearing on the case. In the pocket was found an old comb, a few pieces of cloth or rags, but no money. The latter fact caused the police to make a careful search around the place, with the result that a 2-shilling piece was found. This probably shows the cause for which the victim was enticed to the spot where she met her end. The body was afterwards placed on an ambulance and conveyed to Leman Street Police Station and afterwards to the Whitechapel mortuary. About 6 o'clock, Chief Inspector Swanson, who was accompanied by Inspector Moore, arrived and took charge of the case. Having examined the spot where the body was found, Inspector Swanson gave orders that a portion of the blood should be saved for the purpose of analysis, while the remainder was afterwards washed away. Later on, Chief Constable of the East End District, Mr. McNaughton, Mr. Anderson, and other leading police officials arrived, and by their advice, aided in the investigations. In fact, in a very short space of time, the entire district was covered by police who were to perform an examination of the location. About 10 o'clock yesterday morning, the body of the woman was examined again, after which the following description was noted by police. Age about 25, length about 5 feet, eyes and hair brown, complexion pale, dress a black diagonal jacket, dress black satin bodice, white under linen button boots, black ribbon around the neck, black earrings, and a black earring in her pocket and a black crepe hat. The lobe of the ear had been torn away, but that had evidently been done a considerable time previously. From inquiries the police made, it was ascertained that a man employed at the goods depot saw a woman talking to a man in the railway arch about 1:30 yesterday morning. From his description of the woman, the police are confident it was the one whose body was discovered by Constable Thompson. The man is also able to furnish a description of the person to whom the woman was talking. He described him as being above the middle height and have an appearance of a foreigner after the style of a ship's fireman. In consequence of this statement, Detective Inspector Regan of the Thames Division was instructed to detail those under him to search all vessels lying in the docks and river, and that was done, but without any clue being obtained as to the author of the crime. Throughout the whole of yesterday, great excitement prevailed in the district, and the reign of terror which existed there 2 years since is again expected. Large crowds assembled at the scene of the murder and also in the mortuary where the body is lying. Dr. Phillips yesterday afternoon made a further examination of the body and came to the conclusion that the cut was inflicted by a left-handed person, as in each of the previous murders attributed to Jack the Ripper. He has deferred making a post-mortem examination until this morning, after which it is expected Mr. Wynne Baxter, coroner, will open his inquiry. This makes the 9th murder of this character, which has been committed in Whitechapel since 1888. A woman named Ellen Calloran has stated that she was in the company of the deceased as late as 2 o'clock Friday morning. She says, "Last night we were walking up Commercial Street about 12:30, having come out of the White Hat George Yard, when we met a man dressed in a sailor suit with a pea jacket and cheese cutter hat. He accosted me, but I did not like his looks. He caught hold of me, tore my jacket, and struck me in the face, giving me a black eye. He made an offer to Frances, and I left after advising her not to go with him. I saw them walk down Commercial Street in the direction of Lemon Street. The next thing I heard this morning at 5 o'clock when someone told me that a woman had been murdered near Lemon Street. I said at once, I believe that's Frances. After that, I went to the police. They told me to go to the mortuary, and I identified her at once as Frances. A news agency says that a man is in custody on suspicion, but no importance is attached to his arrest. And in the classifieds, we have Grecian antiquities, terracottas, bronzes, vases, and some early Chinese embroideries are on sale by private contract. Come and have a look. Family portraits available. We have the Crystal Palace Norwood Hydro. Fine situation, perfect atmosphere, 7 miles from London. Turkish bath of every kind, a most comfortable hotel. Terms moderate by day or week. We have miscellaneous, let's see, the libraries and books bought for cash in town or country, packed and removed free of expense. Liberal prices given, John Holloway, bookseller, 17 Garrick Street. Let's see, how about some Hungarian partridges? Orders should be booked at once. Price list on application on Mountain Street in London. Hen pheasants of 1989, dark breed. Pheasant eggs, partridge eggs, price list, fries on application. Lots of pheasants for sale at this time of the year. Enjoy your evening.